Have you ever wondered why some investors struggle while others thrive, even when they have similar knowledge and resources?
Great question, Dominic. It all comes down to the lessons learned over the years of managing money and making smart investment choices. Today, we're going to be diving into the 10 invaluable lessons that have shaped our understanding of finance over the last decade.
These lessons not only highlight the importance of emotional intelligence, but also the significance of having a solid financial plan.
And let me tell you, it's not just about crunching numbers. We're going to share stories that illustrate real life implication of these lessons, like how experiences can shape your appetite for risk and how optimism can set you up for success.
Whether you're just starting out or you've been in this game for a while, this episode has something for everyone.
So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and join us as we explore these fundamental lessons that can guide you on your journey towards financial independence.
We're the Fi Guys. Let's get started. Alrighty, guys, let's get right into today's episode. Thank you for clicking on today's episode. We absolutely appreciate that. We appreciate all the love you guys have been showing all over social media for our podcast. Before we get started in today's episode, please feel free to share. I know, yucky, gross. I know. If not, like the video, subscribe. With that being said, let's get into part one of the 20 things I learned from 10 years in managing money. Obviously, this isn't me. This is our main man, Chris, the co-host of the Fi Guys. Chris, howdy, howdy. Welcome into today's episode. Glad to be here. How about you, my friend?
Dude, I'm always happy to be here. And I'm really excited to go over some of the lessons that I've learned. We were going to do this into a one-parter with just 20 lessons I've learned over the last 10 years of managing money. But some of these, I think we're going to run, we usually run a little bit longer than we normally want to. So I say, let's just break it up into two parts. We get 2 episodes out of it. And then we're going to go over the first 10 today and the first 10 and the next 10 next week. And I've broken these down into different groupings so that all of the lessons are kind of based off of a specific section so that people aren't getting lost. We're not moving around all over the place.
I love it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to dive deep into today's episode. So with that being said, let's get started. What do we got for lesson number one? I'm dying over here. I got to know.
So lesson number 1, and this is grouping number 1, understanding risk and emotions. So the first lesson that I've learned over 10 years of being a financial advisor and a money manager is experience shapes your perception of risk. And what that means is that your ability and need to take risks should be based on a few different factors, not based off of whatever someone told you. And what that means is the stage of life that you're in, the time horizon you have till you start to need that money, the financial circumstances you currently find yourself in. And then, of course, I think most importantly, what are your long-term goals?
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can't really have a you can't have a current day mission if you don't have a long-term goal. And that's interesting. So perspective and experience, they actually do play a role. And as someone who's younger and might not value experience as much, you're saying that what you've learned in seeing success and failure in people is that experience level and being through those ups and down times, right?
Yeah, what I'm really saying is that life experience can really alter your appetite for risk, especially when it faces significant financial events. So an example of this might be if someone lived through 2008 or someone lived through the dot-com bubble, if they lived through and experienced a significant market crash, an investor may become more conservative, opting for safer investments like bonds instead of stocks, even though their financial situation allows for them to take on heavier risk in life. So we might remember our scars much more than we do anything more or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of curious. I want to pick your brain a little bit. I know you're deep into the psychology of money and people. Do you think that by having a life crisis, say 2008, you might have lost your home, dot-com bubble, your 401k might have been wiped out, something like that, right? Do you think that shapes a person more in the beginning years or in the older years? Like, let's say I'm 30 years old and I lost my house, right? Do you think that would have a bigger effect on me? Now, obviously, I mean, psychologically, would that have a bigger effect on me then? Or would it be a bigger psychological effect on maybe a kid who 6 or 7, their parents lost their house and that kind of sticks with them? Because what I've found is how kids grow up in regards to how their parents treat money, it plays such a massive impact on the rest of their entire life, which is so interesting because, I mean, we have parents that teach them about everything, but I feel like in America, they really don't teach money, especially from parents. And if they do, it's usually not great advice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's an old adage that I've, recently learned as a financial advisor and a financial educator. It's that Most people have their money memories and who they are going to be monetarily formed by the age of 7 years old. So what that means is there are 7 years when you're in, I would say from like ages 1 to 3 probably don't matter. So ages like 4 to 7, that's
Mhm.
only 3 years that really shape who you're going to be monetarily for the rest of your life. So to answer your first question, yeah, I think if someone lost their house at 30, but their family, they grew up rich, they never had any concern, that's not going to impact somebody as if they were 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, and now mom and dad lost the house and they're going to have to live on the street for a little. That's going to
Mhm.
shape somebody dramatically more than anyone else. And we can think about this with like baby boomers or people whose parents survived the depression or people who even survived the depression as a kid themselves. Those people were known for hoarding money basically their entire lives and they wouldn't invest anything. They were even afraid of putting money inside the banks. So they would put their
Mm.
money in shoe boxes underneath their beds or hiding it places around the house, burying it inside the backyard. And for them, that was completely normal because their experiences shaped them in order to do that far more than anyone else. So for us, millennials, or Gen Y, Gen Z, looking at that, being like, what you're doing seems crazy because that hasn't happened ever since it happened that one time. But for these people, those experiences are going to last with them forever. That scar is going to stay with them.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that makes total sense, honestly. That makes total sense. So, point number one is how experience can shape your perception of risk. I like that. I like that. I think as a young person, we're very risky when I don't know if we should be, or maybe we should. Maybe now is the best time to be risky.
Yeah, because we have more time to make up for it in case we make a mistake. And I see this a lot with like millennials because we came in to the fold. We saw the dot-com bubble. Like we saw that we were kids. We didn't really understand it, but we got it. When we really saw 2008, like that made, that was most people were graduating high school, graduating college, getting ready to go into the job market. And, everyone was told, go to college, get a good degree. And once you get out, we're going to have a great job waiting for you. And they left that world going into a world that they were promised, and that wasn't there for them anymore.
Yeah.
Now, housing was destroyed, job market was destroyed, everything was pretty much wiped out. So I think the millennials are going to have this scar of not being able to trust what people tell them, to be able to trust the authority, be able to trust government, or trust anyone that everything's going to be okay if you keep working at it. So I think that's why so many millennials ended up trying to create their own jobs, going into tech, doing side hustles, doing all this stuff and renting a lot often too, because that's what the world that they ended up falling into was.
That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point. Yeah, I find that with millennials, that's like the generation for the side hustle, for the two jobs, three jobs, you know, the tech jobs, all that stuff. Selling on marketplace, selling on anywhere you can sell. And I never thought about where that came from. So I guess that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it comes from getting out of school with all your debt and thinking like there's going to be a job waiting for me. Everyone promised me that there would be a job that made making six figures, and then finding that I wasn't even qualified to work at McDonald's. Like,
Yeah.
imagine what that's going to shape for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's brutal. That is brutal.
So, money lesson number two that I've learned after managing money for the past decade: intelligence doesn't guarantee investment success.
That is so true. I feel like it might actually hinder success because you might be a little bit more arrogant. You might be think you're smarter than everybody else and you think you can beat the market when in actuality that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, emotional intelligence is probably the most crucial thing for investment success. In fact, I would say that overconfidence, and especially overconfidence that's derived from academic achievement, can lead to even more poor investment decisions because you think that you're smarter than the market. You think that you are, divine by God to be able to outperform that which everyone else is trying to perform on. Because in truth, the market is quite efficient. There are inefficiencies, yes, but for you to say that I'm going to be the person that's going to find all those inefficiencies, you have to have quite a bit of hubris in order to think that. Because what 3%, 2 to 3% of people beat the market any given year? and you think that from your house, you're going to be that 2 to 3%, not the hedge funds, not the Ray Dalios of the world, not the Warren Buffetts. They're all going to lose compared to you because you were so smart and you got a 4.0 GPA or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous living in a bubble like that. It is very dangerous living in a bubble where you believe you are the smartest one in the world, and you can't lose. You can't lose.
Mhm.
It's no different than a gambler on a streak. It's like, I can't lose. Just increase the betting line. Increase it. Increase it. It's like, that a shoe's gonna fall. It's gonna fall and
Yep.
it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, what I found from working with so many people, it's actually that highly educated people probably struggle more with investing because they tend to overanalyze every single decision. Because historically, when they were, in academia, overanalyzing your problem or whatever it was, that led to success. But in investing, it's actually the opposite. So by them overanalyzing, oftentimes they're actually leading to missed opportunities by never actually going ahead and doing that. While someone who may be less educated in those things might succeed because they're just going to trust on their instincts or just kind of go with it, or they're just going to send it and see what happens. Where someone who is too smart might overanalyze, or they'll go the opposite extreme where they'll say, like, I don't even have to do research because I'm so smart, I already know it. And
Yeah,
then they won't try to see, like, what things don't I know. So both extremes happen with people that are highly educated.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can see why investing would be very hard for them. And yeah, I mean, investing for everybody takes a level of emotional intelligence that not everybody is ready for. Not everybody is ready for. I followed this one content creator that I enjoyed back in the day, and he put $1 million on Tesla, and he would watch it every day. He'd wake up, he'd watch it, he'd wake up, stress. It went down $2. I lost $50,000 today. Like, really, just stressing out, stressing out, stressing out. And he just called his money manager. He's like, sell it all. I can't do this anymore. And if he would have left it in, it would have, like, that $1 million would have been like $28 million or some crazy amount. And it just shows that just because you're great in one area of life doesn't mean you're great in this area of life, right? Just because I'm a great chef doesn't mean I can dunk a basketball. There's no correlation, right?
Yeah, and as for someone who has worked with dentists and doctors and people like that who are always been top of their class, went to great schools, all
Yeah,
through high school, they were the top person, and a lot of people feel like, well, I'm smart in this domain, in being a doctor and being a dentist and being whatever it is that I'm great at, so therefore I must be good in all domains, including investing. And
yeah,
that's where this lesson comes from, is that the smartest people often are the worst at managing money because they're too smart. So it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, it does not guarantee that you are going to be successful as an investor.
not at all. Not at all. And that's a tough lesson to wrap your head around, especially if you're a smart person. Not if I'm a smart person, but if someone is a smart person, right? I wouldn't say that I was, the top of my class. I would never say such foolery, but at least I'm more of a street smart kind of guy than a book smart. But with Chris's help, genuinely, he's helped me. Now I feel like I'm more of a book smart guy. But yeah, that's an interesting one. So point number one was experience can shape your risk management, right? And point number two was the intelligence doesn't guarantee a great return on investment. It's not a great metric of success in regards to investing money.
Mhm.
Point number three. Are we
Point number
ready for
three, you
that?
actually, yeah, you actually touched on it while you were talking, and that is that investing is hard. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that investing is difficult, and by acknowledging that investing can be difficult, that can actually help to simplify the process.
I think from the outside looking in, investing is so easy. The stock can only go one of two ways. It either goes up or it goes down. I got a 50-50 chance, right? But that's that bell curve we talk about on the channel a lot of how ignorance is so bliss. It's so bliss. I wish it was that easy. I wish it was just like a 50-50. It's like, yeah, it'll double today or it'll go down 100% today. I wish, but it's not that simple. Is that kind of what you're touching on this one?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And what I find a lot is like newer investors, when they come to me and they're like, hey, I want to get started in the market, they'll often find themselves overwhelmed by like the vast amount of information that's available out there, which just leads to an extreme level of paralysis. Like every time that they look at something or they think like, I know what I'm going to do, they can find 20 articles countering exactly what they thought they were going to do. And they can also find 20 articles saying exactly what they're going to do is the right thing to do. So I think just by acknowledging that it's difficult, it can help people to focus that there are some key principles that you can focus on instead of trying to learn the wide variety of all things investing. If you focus on a few key principles that work for you, that can really see you through and make sure that you actually develop an investing strategy that works for you rather than chasing 1,000 different rabbits and trying to figure out exactly which is the right investment style for you. Because like I said, there are so many of these things. I've been doing this for a decade and I still learn every single day of new investment strategies that I have never heard of because new ones are constantly coming on the market.
As an investor, as someone who's been doing it for a decade, do you think when a new strategy pops up, it's the hot new thing, is that a fad or should we just stick to value investing like old Warren Buffett?
Everybody's different and it really depends on you. Typically for me, my experience is whenever there's a new fad that comes up, I just say give it a few years. Like if it's such a fad, then why is everyone jumping on it? Let's give it a few years, make sure that it actually is going to play out. Because many people think like, oh, I know the next hot stock. I know what it's going to be. If you actually look at the performance of the market, typically 4 to 20% of stocks are giving all of the gain of the stock market. So that means that there are 80 to 96% of stocks that are going the opposite way. And you're the one who's going to go in there and you're going to be the one that's going to choose which one's going to write, which one's going to be the good ones. And it's extremely difficult. It's the same thing in like venture capital, where people say like, oh, venture capital, it's so risky. So many of those companies are going to go to zero. It's the exact same thing in the stock market. Just we're working at a bigger scale.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being I mean, if your win-loss ratio is like 96%, you're gonna lose. That's pretty bad numbers. Those are pretty terrible numbers. And you're saying there's only a small group of companies that really push the market forward. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's very easy to see in hindsight, like, oh, obviously it was going to be Apple, Amazon, Tesla, NVIDIA. Obviously it was going to be those things. But imagine 20, 30 years ago, no one even knew what NVIDIA was. When I purchased an NVIDIA back in 2000 and I don't know when that would have been, 2014, 2013, I purchased in a bunch. And it was me and a friend who were just dumb and didn't know what we were doing. And we're like, oh, hey, processors for our video games. We had no knowledge of anything coming down the pipeline with the advent of AI or anything like that. No. And all of that was pure dumb luck.
Yeah. Yeah, 5 years ago, nobody talked about AI. Like that wasn't a thing. And now it's in our lives day to day. And that's just so crazy.
I agree. So let's move on to number 4. Overthinking can be just as debilitating as not thinking at all. So we kind of talked about this a little bit with people who are too smart for their own good, often make bad investment decisions. And this comes from having to be okay with making decisions that you don't have certain knowledge on. So someone that's too smart, usually what they're going to do is say like, hey, before I make any choices, I need to make sure that I have all the information available. But in investing, that's impossible because all the information you need available to make a choice is based off of future predictions and no one knows what the future holds. So you can never say, I have perfect knowledge to know that this is going to be the right investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of weird. They're both on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Overthinking and not thinking at all, yet similar results. That must be really annoying for both sides.
Yeah, almost, I mean, it's I would say so. I would say for me, like, especially like me as an advisor, it comes down to being comfortable with making decisions while you have uncertainty moving forward. You can never be certain.
Yeah.
You have to be reasonably certain. And, but a lot of it does come down to like, there's an 80% chance this is going to work. Maybe a 60% chance this is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really tough for people because people want that certainty, right?
Yeah, they really do. Especially when you're, I don't want to say gambling, I don't want to say playing, but especially when you're risking their livelihood, their hours of their life that they spent working for money to invest with someone who invests, right? Whew. Yeah, 60%, that's scary. That's definitely scary.
Yeah, so what I found a lot is that investors who are overthinkers will often spend weeks researching stocks, but then ultimately when it comes down to to press that buy button, they're going to hesitate far too much due to the fear of making the wrong choice. And then they end up missing out on significant price increases, or they never even end up getting into the stock at all because they're going to overthink it so much that they end up just sitting in cash. And they'll end up just doing errors of omission of never doing anything rather than actually going after it and seeing what happens. Where
Yeah.
people who don't overthink, they just send it. And oftentimes that works out for them. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. The fear of making the wrong decision is almost as powerful as anything else. And that's such an overthinking mindset. And do you have any tips for getting over that overthinking and that analysis paralysis?
That's something I struggle with every day. Especially when you manage other people's money, you're just constantly thinking about that. Like, am I doing the right thing? Because maybe for me, I can take on more risk. But when you're talking about somebody else's money, the game becomes a lot harder to do. So I think at the end of it, you really need to trust your gut and just kind of go down to whatever you think is going to be best. And I think that another good thing is to know, like, you don't have to play that game. If you don't want to be a money manager who is managing people's money, who's trying to choose the next hot stock, I always ask myself, like, what leg up do I have when I'm making an investment decision over people? And that's why, in reality, majority of my clients' money is held with other fund managers because that's not my game. I'm
Yeah.
not that guy. I don't have that edge that other people do. So,
Interesting.
what's that old quote, know thyself?
Yeah. Yeah. Who said that one?
I don't
It
know.
was
Who did
Sun
say that
Tzu,
one?
no?
Was it Sun Tzu? Probably.
I think it's Sun Tzu. We'll say so. We're giving credit to Sun Tzu on this one. So that was number 4. Overthinking can be just as debilitating as not thinking at all, right? The idiot and the genius are both on the same playing field, getting the same results in the market, basically.
Yep.
Yep.
So, number 5, our emotions are rigged, but the stock market is not. So, the stock market operates 100% fairly, but emotions are not operating under the same thing. Emotion control is the key to success in investing.
Interesting. So you're not taking the Robert Kiyosaki mentality on the stock market being rigged on this one. Just 100% not rigged. It's the person. And that's usually how it is. It's the person that's the flawed. Anybody can make money in the stock market. Anybody can lose money in the stock market. If you lose money, you're going to have a bad taste in your mouth. You're going to say it's rigged. That makes sense. And that makes sense.
Yeah, we can think about an example, right? So, like, there's a market downturn and some investor is sitting there panicking. So, the market's downturning. That's fair. That's happening because of what everyone's collectively saying. Things are going poorly. But you, as the investor, you panic and you decide to sell your stocks at a loss. And it's driven by your fear of the downturn rather than just sticking to your long term investment strategy of buy and holding. So, what's
Yeah.
that old adage? I'm going to buy high, I'm going to buy low, and I'm going to sell high. And it's so silly that people say that because it's like, obviously that's what I'm going to do. But everyone ends up doing the exact opposite because while they might think the stock market is rigged, it's really their emotion that's rigged. They're the ones who are making the decisions to mess up their long-term plan. The
Yeah.
stock market's doing what the stock market's doing. It'd be like me going outside and today the weather is, I don't know, 110 outside here in Phoenix. And me going out there and yelling at the sky and complaining and saying, you're supposed to be 70. You're supposed to be 70. It's October. Why are you not 70?
Yeah, right.
It's the exact same thing with the stock market. It's going to go up and down. It's just like a weather. I don't get mad at the earth for hurricanes.
Well, we live in Arizona, so it doesn't rain. So maybe if you're in Florida or North Carolina, you could cuss at the sky a few times, and I could see that being very popular in that region. But yeah, you're right though. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense, and that's why our emotional intelligence is one of those things that I don't think you can learn by yourself. You have to be out in the world testing your emotions to really get them dialed in and get them locked into where they need to be. Because it's a dangerous place to be when you go 0 to 100 and your emotions are just all over the place. That can lose you a lot of money, right? That can lose you a lot of friends. It's just in no way a good thing. So it's definitely important to lock that emotional intelligence in.
Yeah. And it's probably the hardest thing, right? I remember when I was getting started in investing and everyone just said, oh, the hardest part about investing is your emotions and just sticking to the plan you came up with. I remember thinking like, that's dumb. Like that's not That can't be
That
it. There
can't
must
be.
be a real
Yeah.
there must be a real secret that they're not telling me. And,
Yeah.
after doing this for a decade, I was like, oh, okay, that was actually 100% correct, because you can have the perfect plan, but if you can't stick to it, then that plan is completely meaningless.
Yeah. Because what's the point of the plan? And that's so interesting because on this podcast, we talk a lot about how when you'll make a plan for a client and they'll come back 6 months, a year later and ask for a new plan, it's like, well, did you follow the original one? No, they did not. And even as someone who manages the money, taught in in school and whatnot, you have to learn to follow your own plan. And I think
Hmm?
that's what's tough. That's tough for everybody. It's good to see that the people in finance are also humans. It's good. That's good.
Yep. So again, let's go over group number one,
Please.
understanding risk of emotions. Number one, experiences shape your perspective of risk. Number two, intelligence doesn't guarantee investment success. Number three, investing is hard. Number four, overthinking can be just as debilitating as not thinking at all. And number five is our emotions are rigged, but the stock market is not.
Hmm. There it is. There it is. So we're going on to number 6. This is going to be like a group 2 of
Yep.
the
Group two,
perfect.
and this will be investment strategies and financial planning. So
Exciting. Very exciting
this
stuff.
is where I live, right? So
Right?
number 6, no one lives on the long term, and long term returns matter when it comes to investing for your future. But surviving short term fluctuations is the essential part to getting us to being able to achieve those long term returns. So, a strategy that you can stick to is often better than a perfect strategy that you can't maintain.
Say that one more time. A strategy you can stick to is better than a strategy that you can't maintain.
Yeah, a strategy that you can stick to is better than a perfect strategy that you can't maintain.
That is so true. That's so true. I can equate that to so many things in my life. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's like if I only, if I post 4 videos a day, I could do that. That'll be the best return. It's like, okay, that was only good for like 2 weeks and that's so hard to keep up. So hard to keep up. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So it's better to plan for the long term but live in the short term. Basically, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, what I would say, like for an example, would be like a young investor might think of like a long term strategy, but they need to adjust their portfolio to accommodate unexpected life events like job loss or medical uncertainty. So while there might be a perfect plan of, oh, I'm going to invest 100% of my money into the stock market because I know in general it's going to return 7 to 10% per year. But if I'm not living in that, something might happen today where I might lose a job, might get injured, something like that, and all of my money is tied up, then
Hmm.
that's not good financial planning. That's not the good way of making sure that we have a good investment strategy. We need to both plan for long term while also remembering that today needs to be maintained as well.
Yeah, there's no sense planning for the future if you're not willing to live for today. Okay.
And it's a
Okay.
balance, right? And it's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah.
It's one that
So
I'm still working on.
it is a hard balance for anybody. It's a very hard balance. And it sucks because like if you grew up, not necessarily without money, but if you grew up with that mindset of scarcity and you finally get some money, now you have something to lose. And now
Mhm.
you're even more like, yeah, I don't want to invest. I don't want to do anything else with it. It's like I want to keep it safe. But at the same time, the only way to grow it is to risk it, basically.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Can I don't even know how to like to tell people to make it any easier than that. And just saying like it is what it is. If you want to, you have to find that balance for you. And I don't think there is a correct balance for every single person. Living for today, like I think of me and my wife when we first met, I was very much living in the future of
Mhm.
always like, we're going to sacrifice today for the future, sacrifice today
Yeah.
for the future. And for too long did I do that. And now looking back on it, like I'm here in the future and I'm like, dang, I really wish I lived back then too. So, but
Yeah.
then there's my wife who is all about like living for right now, today. But that doesn't set you up very well for a year, 2 years out when you maybe want to move back to San Diego or something like that. You haven't been setting yourself up the entire time to have those contingencies ready to go.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's 100%. So it's a balance between living for today and living for tomorrow. And is there like a secret ratio? Is there like a great algorithm we can figure out? Is there like a method? It's like save X amount, spend X amount. because I heard this one that I really liked, and I'm not adopting it. I'm not adopting it just yet. Right? This is not something I'm adopting just yet, and I don't recommend anybody do this. This is just entertainment purposes. But um, the strategy is I'm spending 50% of my money like I'm gonna live 50 more years, and I'm spending the other 50% of my money like I'm gonna live 50 more days. And I always thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
50% like you're gonna, so 50% like you're gonna live for 50 more years,
Yep.
50% like you're gonna live for 50 more days.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say for easy math, you make $100,000 a year.
Perfect.
So does that mean 50,000 of it is going to be saved for the future, or what does that mean?
Yeah. So 50,000 would go towards investments, would go towards maybe buying a rental property. It would go towards the future, basically. And then the other 50% would go towards having fun, obviously paying bills, expenses, day-to-day expenses, and just living for today, going on trips and doing stuff like that.
So does that mean that your goal is a 50% savings rate?
Yeah, which is pretty good.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. So I would say if you have a 50% savings rate, there's really nothing you can do to mess that up.
That's what I'm thinking. That's my simplified strategy that I don't recommend, but 50% saving strategy is a great strategy though. No?
No, I would agree with that, but I feel like I think that a 50% savings rate is like the bee's knees. I don't think you can get much better than that. But I think for our listeners listening in, it'd be like, oh yeah, it's easy. Just go to work all day and just save 100% of your income and live under a bridge. It's really as easy as that. You can be financially independent today.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The fire movement could happen today. It could happen today. It could happen today. Just Airbnb your house and live in your car. New strategy alert? I don't know.
Yeah, new
Anyway.
strategy alert. That's why I always ask people whenever I'm meeting with them is like, what are you willing to do to meet your goals? And most people will say like, I'm willing to do anything. Like I will do anything right
Yeah,
now.
it's
Like,
so it's such a lot of
and,
crap. Yeah.
and I'm just like, I'm like, no, no, you won't. I'm like, okay, so what are you not willing to do? And they're like, we're willing to do anything. There's nothing we're not willing to do. I'm like, okay, can we sell the kids?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
can we
How
move
many
into the
kidneys do you
garage and
have?
rent it out? Yep.
Do we need to you got any limbs you don't want? Like I want to keep my limbs, I want to keep my body intact.
So you really
Yeah.
need to ask yourself, like, what am I willing to do? But more importantly, what am I not willing to do?
Hmm.
I think those are the more important questions than like, how do I get to financial independence? Well, what are you willing to do for it? And what are you not
Yeah.
willing to? What sacrifices you're willing to make? Because that's what it comes down to. So many people want all of it without having to put any of the work in. And unfortunately, that's just not the way that works.
No, not at all. Not at all. So that was number 6. No one lives life on a long-term plan.
Yep. Yeah,
Perfect.
too many people are living in the short term. No one's living on the long term as they should. But you also need to find that balance, right? So,
Mhm.
number 7, a product is not a portfolio, and a portfolio is not a plan.
Interesting. A product is not a portfolio, and a portfolio is not a plan. Could
So
explain
let me
that a
make
little
some
bit.
definitions for there. So first off, when I say a product, I mean an investment product. So what traditional financial advisors are known for doing. That's why financial advisors don't have the best history of doing what's best for the client because they were selling investment products, whether that be life insurance, mutual funds, annuities, stuff like that. And a product that you buy for something is not a portfolio. A portfolio is everything that you have that is supposed to generate income for you in the future. That could be real estate, that could be a business, that could be investments, that could be mutual funds, annuities. All of these things make up a portfolio. But a single product is in no way a portfolio. A single product is just that, it's one product. And then if you have a portfolio, so you have all of these other investments, you have real estate, you have stocks, you have crypto, you have all these things. Just because you have that portfolio, that does not mean that you have a financial plan.
Hmm.
Too many people will equate these things. Oh, I have an investment product. Therefore, I have a financial plan and a financial portfolio.
Mhm.
Just because you have one of these things does not mean that you have any of the other things. They're all completely separate.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. A product is not a portfolio, and a portfolio is not a plan. I got that. For where should people have this plan? Should it be in their phone and in their notes app, or it should be in like a booklet, or where should they go to create something like that?
I would say it's going to be based off of your individual goals and what you're looking for. But when I say this is what I really want people to understand is that successful investing requires a solid foundation in personal finance and financial planning. The most important thing is how are you with money?
Mm,
Everyone calls it personal finance, but majority of personal finance is personal, not about finance.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. It is so much more on the personal aspect, the emotional side, how they act, how they, because if, that's a good, I like that. That's a great line. I like that a lot. Okay, so personal finance, it's more on the personal side than the actual finance. I like that. I like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
So what I think of is I've had this happen to me in the past where clients have bought like a series of like old mutual funds from their advisors in the past, but they don't have any cohesive financial plan that aligns with their goals. So
Mhm,
when they would meet with me to see like, hey, what's your goals? What's going on with this portfolio that you have here? It just
mhm,
led to confusion and a bunch of inefficiencies in their investments and ultimately their long-term financial plan, because at the end of the day, they didn't actually figure out what their goal was. Because in order for us to create a financial plan, we first need to have an endpoint.
yeah.
And too many people, too many financial advisors, especially, are out there. They're selling products, they're selling
Yep,
portfolios,
yep,
or they're selling plans. And none of those three things are working in harmony with one another. And more importantly, none of those three things are actually taking into effect this person's long term goal.
mhm, I agree.
And I think it's wrong that most people are walking into financial advisors' offices looking for help and they're being told, oh, I have the perfect investment for you before they even sit down and get to know somebody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have to kind of get to know the person before you can create the plan, basically, is what you're saying.
Because so much of creating a financial plan isn't just me from a from upon high telling you this is what you must do. It's a negotiation. It's
Mhm.
I give you the perfect plan, but if you're not going to follow any of it, then I wasted my time and I wasted your money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. And do you find that to be like a common occurrence when working with clients?
I used to. I don't anymore because now I've changed the way that I work with people to do
Mhm.
financial coaching, which is usually a
Okay.
year long to a year and a half long session of us working every month together and slowly moving the needle. Because what I used to do is, hey, give me $3,000 to $5,000. I'll make you a financial plan, and I'm going to give you this really fancy booklet, and you're
Yep.
going to be able to go home. And once you just follow this booklet to the T, it has everything inside there, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
It never worked
It never works. It never works. A plan is
because
only perfect in the planning phase, basically.
Yep, because a financial plan as a product is not a true plan and it is not a portfolio. All of these things take time to build. And it's too often that financial advisors will put their self ahead of the advisor or ahead of
Mhm.
the
Uh,
individual that they're meeting with
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to make money today.
Yeah. So that's kind of why you want to look for a fiduciary in that role, correct?
Yep, I would say that's a good place to at least start.
At least
You
start.
want to make
Okay.
sure that you're working with somebody who has your best interest at heart. But more importantly, you have to make sure you interview them, follow the gut check. Do I like this person? Do I trust this person? Is this person going to help me reach the goals that I want?
Mhm. Absolutely. And the only way to really get to know them is you really want them to get to know you too, not just on a surface level, but really understand how you operate and how you spend your money, so you can have the best plan. Right? You don't want someone who's just cookie cutter, fresh off the conveyor belt, just not personable, not detail oriented. You really want to get a customized plan for your specific lifestyle.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to trust, right? Trusting in
Mhm.
the person that you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
Because from when I work with people, sometimes like with actually a lot of my clients, I know that I'm probably the only person in their life that they can have honest money conversations with without
Yeah.
fear of being judged, without fear of, this person thinking that I'm stupid, without any of that stuff. Because
Yeah.
most of the time you can't sit around the table and talk to your friends about how much money you made last year or how much you should give to the donations or anything like that.
No, because people are very self-conscious about money. People are very scared. It's just that I don't know why. Why do you think it's such a taboo subject? You think it's because in our country sometimes we equate how much money you make to the value of the person?
I think so. I think a lot of it is because we've equated money with value of as a human being. You
Mm,
are this good of a person because you make this much money. And you are
yeah.
this bad of a person because you only make this much money. And then also like it's been pervasive for generations that we just don't talk about money. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest issues that people refuse to talk about it, therefore making it more of this elusive, scary thing.
Hmm. that kind of reminds me of something I heard a while back on, it was a podcast, but it was saying the reason why people ask, like, hey, what do you do for a living? It's to see how much respect they're going to give you when they talk to you. It's like, hey, I pick up garbage for a living. Like, oh, okay. It's like, oh no, hey, I'm the head of a university, or I'm the CEO of XY company. It's like, whoa, that's crazy, you know? And even in my response right there, it showed like, wow, that's great, like that's awesome. Um, that showed my reaction, my natural reaction to that. And that kind of bums me out a little bit because it's you can be the richest man in the world and still be a horrible person. And you can
Yeah.
be the poorest man in the world and be an amazing person. I think that's a cultural thing in our country that maybe needs to shift. That money is great for buying things, but money is not everything. I think too often in this country, especially in this consumer economy, we often glorify money and worship it in ways that are very, very unhealthy for the long term and the relationships with our fellow citizens and fellow humans. But hmm, that's an interesting one. So that was number 7.
Yep. Yeah, that a product is not a portfolio and a portfolio is not a plan. I do want to touch upon one thing you mentioned there of
Mhm.
asking people, what is it that you do? Because I
Yeah,
feel like it's kind of like asking someone like, oh, how's it going today? Like, you don't
yeah,
even think about it. It's just the first thing that comes out of your mouth. And I agree with you that I think that's something we need to change because too often are we tying someone's worth to what they do for work.
yeah,
Like, we don't even know if they're making a lot of money, but we just assume based off of the work that they're doing that they make a lot of money or they don't make a lot of money, so we can treat them like crap or whatever.
yeah.
And this is really difficult because there's a lot of people right now who are working side hustles. They're just trying to make ends meet. And if you're going to objectify them to just being based off of the job you have is what's going to constitute how I react to you, that's kind of shitty. So a question that I've been trying to get better at asking when I meet somebody rather than what do you do for work, it's what are you passionate about?
Mm, I like that. I like that a lot better.
So I've been trying to get better at that because I find myself like it's the first question you just ask. It just comes off the tip of your tongue. You don't even have to think about it.
Mhm.
What do you do for work? But I've been trying to get better at it, just saying like, hey, what are you most passionate about in life? What do you like to do on your days off? Stuff like that. Because that way you get to actually know the person and see like, do we align here?
Yeah,
Because just because someone else is a financial advisor or a CEO or a garbage man, if we have different values, that doesn't matter to me what their job title is, or at least it shouldn't.
I love that. I love that because when you ask like, "What are you passionate about?" you'll see their face light up. But if you say, "Hey, like, what do you do for work?" It's like, "Oh, I've been an accountant for 30 years," and then they're just
Cool.
like straight. Yeah, that's
Yep.
pretty much it. But I say, "Hey, what are you passionate about?" It's like, "Oh, I love riding horses. I love going out riding horse like every weekend. We love going and riding." It's like, "Oh wow, that's what your retirement want. That's what you want in life. That you want more of that, and that's just who you are." And it's like, it's interesting.
Yeah. And it's a good way to find if like, is this your person? Is this someone you want to get to know better?
Yeah.
Do your passions align with their passions? Just because someone works in the same industry as you, that doesn't mean that you guys should be best friends.
No, no, God, no. No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Otherwise, you'd see big cliques of people in these industries, just like buddy buddy all the time. It's like, sure, birds of a feather flock together, but not like that. Not like that. Not always. Not always. So that was number 7. What do we got for number 8?
For number 8, there is no such thing as a perfect portfolio. So
Damn.
the best portfolio is one that you can stick with, not necessarily the most quote unquote optimized one for you.
There it is. Kind of touching back on some stuff we talked about a little bit earlier about it's better to go for the one that you can maintain versus the one that is perfect that you can't maintain. And that is so profound. I don't know if you realize how profound that is. Um, because it's like you can give someone the perfect nutrition plan, the perfect workouts. This is what you need to hit every week. It's like, okay, but I've never worked out in my life. What do I do? Like, how do I do this? Like, no, just get them in the routine. I love this thing. I heard this. This was so interesting to me. A little bit of a psychology trick. This guy was very overweight, very, very, very overweight, and he just couldn't go to the gym. Correction. He just didn't want to go to the gym. He could, but he didn't
Hmm.
want to. And his trainer and his doctor, they came up with this plan of, all right, you need to go to the gym. Like, you are dying. Like, you are very unhealthy. You're a very unhealthy person. You're making horrible life choices. And we can't seem to get him to go be consistent. So it was like, okay, what's the best way for consistency? Well, best way for consistency is to remove all difficulties and make it as easy as possible. It's like, okay, what is the habit we're trying to really get sunk in? Well, we're trying to get him to go to the gym. It's like, okay, for 30 days, I want you to go to the gym for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes. Like, not workout, not like, not, on Monday, back, Tuesday, legs, Wednesday, upper body. It's like, no. Just every day, go to the gym for 5 minutes.
Just
Treadmill,
show up.
just show up. Just literally just show up. And at the end of the 30 days, it's like, oh, this is a habit already. This is something I do. So this is something I'm going to continue to do. And since I'm already here, I might as well work out. And it built the habit. I just love that. I love that. I'm kind of forgetting though. There's a great book on atomic habits by, is it
Yep.
Tim Ferriss?
No, it's not Tim Ferriss. It's like
It's not Tim
James
Ferriss.
something.
James something.
No.
But amazing, an amazing book. I might have to read that one again just to let it soak in again. But I know first two reads I hit that book really changed everything. Basically talks about how to keep a habit, how to stick with a habit, how to crush bad habits. Really amazing book. I highly recommend you guys go check it out. Atomic Habits, anywhere you want to buy books.
James Clear.
James Clear, that's what it was. Thank you for that. Appreciate that one. Yeah, that's I would say that's on my top 20 books of must reads for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And back to the point that we were bringing up here is that there is no such thing as a perfect portfolio. I can remember for years when I first started trying to become a financial advisor, trying to become a good money manager, I spent years trying to create the quote unquote perfect mix of assets.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I wanted to bring this one up, and this is probably one of the most important ones, this point here, is because I realized that the simplicity of a diversified portfolio could have performed just as well as my quote unquote perfect mix of assets. And it would have been little to zero stress on me to maintain.
Yeah.
And sometimes, again, the best portfolio is the one you can stick to, not the one that's the most optimized one. Because I remember being there, having to make trades in the morning, do options, all this stuff, having to constantly rebalance and do all this stuff to maintain the quote unquote perfect mix. And sometimes it comes down to what is the easiest thing for you to do? What is just showing up?
Yeah.
Because if you show up for long enough, you're going to win.
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo was his name-o. That is so true. Show up long enough, you're going to win. Yep. It's a battle of attrition. Who can last the longest? I love that. So that was number 8. There's no such thing as a perfect portfolio. That breaks my heart. That makes me cry inside. You can't tell, but I'm crying inside. So the best portfolio, basically, like you said, it's the one you can stick with. The one that doesn't make you nervous. The one that you don't panic sell everything on and just get out. The perfect portfolio is the one you can stick with. I like it.
Yep. And the final one for investment strategy and planning, number 9, in investing, less is more. Simplicity in investment strategy often leads to better outcomes than more complexity. It's very similar to the last point that we just had, but sometimes, and I could think of it from personal experience, having a complex investment strategy with numerous assets can lead to nothing more than confusion and poor performance, while having just a simple, straightforward approach that is well-chosen investments can often yield better results.
Interesting. And why do you think that is?
I think because a lot of it comes down to how much effort you have to put into maintaining a complex investment strategy. And at the end of the day, we're all really lazy and we want to be as simple as possible. And if you're going to make things, I mean, what is it? The enemy of progress is complexity.
Yeah.
So if you want to move forward, then go ahead and make sure you have to dedicate 50 hours a week to it. I've worked so hard. I worked for a decade to try to create the perfect investment plan. And that's the reason that I come back and we do this podcast, is to show you that it does not exist. And if it does exist and you're that person that can maintain it, wonderful for you. Mm-hmm. But that means that you're going to be sacrificing something else. It's time with your family, time with your friends, time just relaxing.
Yep.
So sometimes the perfect plan is whatever plan you can stick to, whatever is simplest for me. And
absolutely,
what it comes down to is, did maybe I get a percentage point or two when I was managing my own quote unquote perfect asset and running around doing all this work? Yeah, maybe I was. But how much is 1 or 2% worth to my time, to my energy, to all that stuff?
Mhm.
Currently, I have a passive portfolio that I literally do no thinking of. Money
Yeah.
goes into it every week, every 2 weeks. I don't have to think about it. I don't stress about it. It's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't really care. I think that's worth 1 or 2%. And that 1 or 2% isn't even guaranteed.
No, no. And you built it with yourself in mind. And that's what I love. Set and forget. That's the kind of you don't need that extra burden on your mind. You don't need it. And you know that about yourself. That's why this is the personal aspect of the personal finance. And I love that. That's how everybody should create their plan. It makes the most sense.
Agree with that. So, just to recap numbers 6 through 9 for investment strategy and planning. Number 6, no one lives on the long term. Number 7, a product is not a portfolio, and a portfolio is not a plan. Number 8, there's no such thing as a perfect portfolio. And number 9, oftentimes in investing, less is more. We're going to move on to our 10th and final um, point for this podcast that we're going to be talking about. And this is for my financial advisors that like to listen to the Fi Guys. This is about client relations and communication. Just so you know, next week we're going to be talking about another 10 because I actually came up with 20 different things that I've learned over the last 10 years. But in this podcast, just for sake of time, we're only going to do the first 10. So this is going to be our last one. But if you found value, please like, subscribe. Let us know what's been your favorite thus far. And we're going to keep it going for next week. So,
Absolutely.
Group 3, client relationships and communication. Point 10. The only client question that matters is, am I going to be okay?
Interesting. Am I gonna be okay? How about that?
Yep. Every client that I meet with is unique. Everyone's situation is 100% a snowflake to them. But the underlying concern of, am I going to be okay, is universal. Surviving and thriving. That's what we are here to do on this world. And am I going to be okay is survival.
Hmm. I like that. I like that. I like that.
So after
That's kind of
working
a
with
deep
people,
one.
yeah, it is kind of a deep one because when I work with people, I'll tell you another one that isn't in here, but the main questions that I answer with people is, am I going to be okay, and how much is enough?
Yep.
If you have those two answers in your head of yes, I will be okay, and this is enough for me, you're pretty much golden. But finding those two things often takes a guide to help you figure it out for yourselves. Because most people can't answer that on their own because it takes a lot of time of sitting alone in a room, which is the scariest thing in the world for most people. I think that's why so many people seek out financial advisors, seek out financial planners, is because they want assurance about their financial futures.
That's 100% right. And one of the biggest, scariest things to me is like getting to your goal and realizing it wasn't enough. That's a scary place to be. But I guess when is enough ever enough? You got to find that for yourself. Oof, scary.
And that's the
Scary.
hardest part too, is because it's a moving goal. The closer
Mhm.
you get to it, the more you realize that it just kept on moving. So sometimes there are strategies that I have that I worked with people to make sure that we do. But as a financial advisor, what I really focus on is reassuring my clients about their retirement plans, about what their goals are, and addressing their concerns about market volatility and ensuring that they feel secure in their financial future, whether that their goal remains the same or changes, that we have the ability to pivot the plan because a perfect plan does not exist.
Nope. Nope. And you know this from 10 years of experience, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's wild. That's so awesome. Well, is there anything else you have to add for this part
No,
one?
I
Huh.
would say we look forward to seeing you on Five Friday Feedback. Come back next week for next Monday's podcast. We're going to do another 10 that I've learned over the last 10 years.
Perfect. Perfect. The back 10. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. So, with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. Make sure to follow, like, if you'd like to. We would really appreciate it. If you're already here and you're not followed, that's crazy work. That's actually unbelievable. But with that being said, guys, we appreciate you. Don't forget the fee for the show. Share it with a friend who you want to see succeed in the finance realm. But till next time, I'm Dom. He's Chris. And we'll see you in the next one. Later, guys.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.